One man, 4 wives, a suspicious death, and a disappearance.
You were almost glued to the TV to see what's going to happen next. What else can happen?
The life and crimes of Drew Peterson have made international headlines.
He says he believes that he helped you dispose of your wife's body. Can you at least respond to that?
No.
Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. As always, if you could give this video a like and comment with your thoughts down below, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and click that red button because I make more content like this, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post. Today, we are discussing Drew Peterson, a cop with a murky reputation, 4 wives, 1 suspicious death, and 1 missing. A dirty cop that thought he was above the law and could outsmart everyone else, and almost got away with murder. Let's get into it. Drew Peterson was born on January 5th, 1954 in Bolingbrook, Illinois. His father, Donald Peterson, was a Marine, while his mother, Betty, was a stay-at-home mom to Drew and his 2 siblings. His father was a strict military man with a drinking problem and a temper, something that Drew would mirror later in his life. Drew spent many of his early years trying to earn his father's approval, but seemed to always come up short in his father's eyes. Peterson joined the military in 1974 and trained as a military police officer. That same year, he married his high school sweetheart, Carol Hamilton. Carol was 3 years his junior and was still in her senior year of high school when they married. The couple had 2 sons, Eric and Stephen. In 1977, Drew joined the Bolingbrook Police Department in suburban Chicago. Initially, he was hired on as a military police officer, but was transferred a year later into the metro area narcotics squad. Peterson excelled as an undercover cop. He was trained to be deceptive and convincing, which was a skill he mastered with ease. Not all cops are able to easily enmesh themselves into the seedy underbelly of the criminal world, but that wasn't a problem for him. However, he began to blur the lines between his job and what he wanted to do. He stopped taking orders from his superiors, believing himself to be bigger than the badge he represented. He started doing his own undercover operations, unauthorized. In 1980, his wife Carol leaves him following the discovery that her husband was using his undercover second life as an excuse to sleep with women. Drew said it was a necessity to gain the trust. Carol disagreed. Carol would be the first and one of the only wives to get spousal support from Drew. Peterson married his second wife, 23-year-old Vicky Rutkowicz, in 1982, but the couple had dated for years before that, possibly even while he was still married to Carol. Vicky was a bar owner, and Drew didn't like that she had so much going on outside of their marriage. Vicky stated that their marriage was not a happy union, and that Peterson would often get physical with her, and he manipulated and played mind games. By 1985, Drew was fired from the Bolingbrook Police Department among several accusations of bribery, disobedience, and misconduct. However, he appealed and his union was able to secure his job again, though he would be demoted to a patrol officer. Vicky stated that Drew had placed recording devices throughout their home and monitored her and the children. He would also threaten that he knew how to kill her and make it look like an accident. Their marriage only lasted 10 years. Vicky finally had enough when it was discovered that Peterson was not so subtly dating someone new, Kathleen Savio. Kathleen was a young and beautiful accountant who was set up with Drew on a blind date. Kathleen had been swept away with gifts, vacations, and the promise of a stable life with a home and children. To Kathleen, Drew was Prince Charming. She believed every tall tale he told her, including that he was divorced, when in actuality, he was very much still married. Drew had told her wild lies about Vicky, including that she was a mentally unstable drug addict. Drew warned her that if Vicky ever reached out to her, she should ignore everything because Vicky was so unstable and the divorce wasn't going well. Despite all the red flags, Kathleen and Drew married in 1992, only 6 months after their first date, and only weeks after his divorce to Vicky was finalized. The couple had 2 children, and it was after the birth of their second son that Kathleen felt a change in their relationship. Kathleen had settled into motherhood, and much like his first 2 previous marriages, Drew hated when he wasn't the center of attention. In his first marriage, it was after the birth of his first 2 sons that started the deterioration of the marriage, and the second was Vicky's bar that kept her away from home. Drew resented that so much attention was being focused on the children and started abusing Kathleen in retaliation. Drew would call Kathleen fat and ugly, and physical abuse followed. Kathleen would end up in the emergency room on 2 separate occasions. In October 2001, Kathy received an anonymous letter informing her that her husband was dating a 17-year-old girl named Stacy. Kathleen was furious, but when she confronted Drew about it, she was the one that ended up in the ER covered in bruises. It was at that point when Kathleen began documenting the abuse, hiring a divorce attorney, and kicked Drew out of the home, and he moved into an apartment he'd gotten for Stacy. It was a bitter divorce. Drew purchased a home near Kathy to stay close to the children, but it was also to monitor and attempt to intimidate and control Kathleen. She said that once she woke up to Drew hovering over her bed, and she called her sister and told her that she wasn't going to make it to the end of the divorce. She believed Drew was going to kill her. Kathy was going to leave the marriage with half the house, half of Drew's pension, and full custody of their 2 children. The divorce was going to financially devastate Drew, and he was not happy about it. The police were called 18 times to Kathleen's home for trespassing, assault and battery, and unlawful restraint. Despite this, no further protections were offered to Kathleen, and Drew suffered no consequences. The Bolingbrook Police Department did nothing about the accusations that one of their own was threatening to kill his wife. Kathleen went as far as going above the police department by sending a letter to the Will County Assistant State Attorney Elizabeth Fragel outlining the abuse and her fears about her husband, but still nothing was done. Kathleen's divorce is granted on October 10th, 2003. At this point, Drew and Stacy have been unofficially married for a year and have already had their first child together. On October 18th, about a week later, Drew and Stacy marry in a low-key official ceremony. Despite the divorce being granted, it still didn't mean freedom for Kathleen. They still had to come to an agreement about dividing the marital assets. They had one more settlement appointment to finalize things, but on March 1st, 2004, Kathleen was found dead in her bathtub, and Drew was one of the first on the scene, as he was with the neighbors when they discovered the body, when he went to drop off his kids after his visitation. Though Drew was initially thought to be a suspect, he was cleared with an airtight alibi. He was home with Stacy that night. Kathleen's death was deemed an accidental drowning. Drew produced a handwritten will signed and dated on March 2nd, 1997, when he and Kathleen were still married. The will stated that all assets would be left to each other, and Drew would become the benefactor of Kathleen's estate, which included custody of their children, the ability to make funeral arrangements, and Kathleen's $1 million life insurance policy. Drew had met Stacy when she was only 16 years old. She worked the overnight shift as a front desk agent at a hotel. Drew also worked overnight shifts, and they apparently met because his partner was dating Stacy's co-worker. Stacy Cales was young, beautiful, full of life, but also a prime target for someone like Drew Peterson. Stacy had grown up in a chaotic household. She grew up around a lot of anger, neglect, abuse, witnessing substance abuse, and when you grow up around that, you look for any light at the end of the tunnel. Her mother had also disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1998, and her case remains unsolved. When Stacy turned 17, the legal age of consent in Illinois, Stacy told her sister that she was dating Drew and that he had bought and furnished an apartment for her. Stacy was a sweet girl. She had a loving nature and loved kids. She wanted to be a mom more than anything. And even after Kathleen died, she took over as a maternal figure to Kathleen's boys, loving them just as she did her own children. Stacy was also swept up in Drew's romance. He bought her gifts and took her places, did fun things, and promised her a life that she had always wanted. Stacy's older sister didn't approve of the relationship. Among her concerns was the 30-year age gap between the couple, and she thought Stacy was much too young to be dating anyone, let alone dating someone so much older. Stacy gets pregnant in 2002 and gives birth to her first son, Anthony, in July of 2003. She marries Drew in the fall of 2003 when she was 19 and he was 49. All of this happening while Drew is going through his divorce with Kathleen. Again, Drew told familiar lies about his soon-to-be ex-wife, including that she was unstable and was abusing drugs, both of which were completely untrue. In 2005, Stacy has her second child, a daughter named Lacey, Drew's sixth child. In 2006, Stacy's sister died of colon cancer at 31. The death devastated Stacy, and she starts to experience severe depression and anxiety. At the same time, her relationship with Drew begins to sour. Stacy, in addition to being a mom, was also working towards her nursing degree, meaning there was little time for Drew with 4 kids, school, and maintaining their home. As we saw with his other marriages, this doesn't go over well with Drew. Stacy doesn't talk to too many people about what's going on at home. She kept a lot of it to herself. Though knowing how Drew treated Kathleen, we can speculate that Stacy was treated much the same. At some point, Stacy had cosmetic surgery. She had breast plants put in. Perhaps Drew had also made her feel bad about her body, or coerced her into having surgery. By 2007, Stacy seemed to have enough of Drew. She started opening up to family, as well as her pastor. She wanted out, but she didn't want to end up like Kathleen. Stacy told her sister that Drew was acting super possessive, accusing her of cheating on him. He would monitor where she went, how long she was gone for, and follow her. Stacy felt that her marriage had deteriorated to a point of no return. In October of 2007, Stacy's aunt, Candace Aiken, visits the Peterson family. Candace said that Stacy seemed stressed out and frazzled. Candace felt that Stacy seemed to be experiencing domestic violence and offered for her and the kids to come back with her to California. Stacy said that she would think about it and told Candace that she wanted to leave her marriage. Stacy also met with her pastor, who had served as her and Drew's marriage counselor. She sought advice and told him more about what was really going on in the marriage. She said that Drew was intensely jealous and it was unbearable. She also thought he was stalking her or had other police officers stalking her. She didn't feel safe calling law enforcement, and she made a shocking revelation. She said that she knew Drew killed Kathleen. The night that she had died, Drew hadn't been with her that night. He had been gone for several hours in the middle of the night, and he told her to lie to police.
What did you say to her at that point?
I believe one of the first things I said to her was, "What do you want me to do with this information?" And she said, "I don't want you to do anything, I just want you to know."
On October 26, 2007, Stacy told family members that she was going to file for divorce. She said that she'd already told Drew, and he hadn't taken it well. She mentioned to her sister that she didn't feel safe in their home. She said that she had plans to meet with a divorce lawyer the following week. Stacy's sister, Cassandra, began to spend more time at Stacy's house. Drew was usually on his best behavior when others were around, and Stacy felt more comfortable when she wasn't alone. Cassandra leaves Stacy's home at 11:30 p.m. on October 27th. The two had plans to meet the following day at 10 a.m. The following day, Stacy failed to show up and Cassandra was unable to get in touch with her. A neighbor the next morning notices both of the Peterson vehicles in the driveway around 10 a.m. She went grocery shopping, and when she returned, around noon, she noticed Stacy's car was missing. She went over and asked Drew where Stacy was, and he told her that Stacy had gone to her grandfather's house. He asked if she could watch the kids for a few minutes, which she did, and Drew left for about 15 minutes. Drew also called in sick for work that day, saying that he had unused accumulated sick time that he wanted to use before his retirement in January. Cassandra continues to attempt to get in touch with Stacy. She goes over to see Drew at 11 p.m. when she notices neither of the Peterson vehicles are in the driveway. Drew tells her that Stacy left him for another man. He said that she took $25,000, her car, and her bikinis. Cassandra knew something bad had happened right away. Given Stacy's fears, she knew that she would never leave her children with Drew. She would also never willingly abandon her children. They were her whole world. Cassandra left and immediately filed a police report. She goes to another police department, the Downers Grove Police Department, but they tell her to go to the Bolingbrook PD. Reluctantly, she files there, and Drew was tipped off at 2 a.m. She also drove to the Illinois State Police Department and filed a statewide missing persons report. On October 29th, Tom Murphy, Drew's stepbrother, is admitted to the hospital following a suicide attempt. He claimed that the night Stacy disappeared, Drew had called him and asked him to move something, a blue storage bin that Drew had removed from his bedroom, and asked for help putting into his car. Tom said that Drew told him this never happened. Tom came to the horrifying conclusion that he had helped get Stacy's body out of the house. The guilt tore at him, and he was scared of Drew, and he attempted to kill himself. Tom was offered an immunity deal, and he wore a wire in an attempt to get Peterson to say something incriminating. Nothing comes of the call, but Tom says that in the days leading up to Stacy's disappearance, Drew had asked him to kill Stacy, but he said that he couldn't.
October 28th.
I have no idea what anybody's talking about like that.
Warm to the touch.
No.
He says he believes that he helped you dispose of your wife's body.
No.
Can you at least respond to that?
No.
Not at all.
No response.
Drew started a media campaign. He goes on Larry King Live, The Today Show, countless radio shows to talk about his missing wife.
Can you look me straight in the eye and tell me that you had nothing to do with the death of your third wife, Kathy, or the disappearance of your fourth wife, Stacy?
I can look right in your eye and say I had nothing to do with either of those incidences. Everybody says I cheated, but I went out and sought female attentions elsewhere after the marriages were over, but we were still legally married.
Were you ever physical with her?
Never.
Never. So those stories are totally untrue.
Correct. I'm a police officer,
Right.
and I don't work for the phone company or the power company. And as a police officer, we don't have the same ability to do things as the common person. If I get involved in a domestic situation where I'm physical with a wife, I'll lose my job. And I would never even care to even come close to risking that. And I kind of challenge anybody out there to find anybody that has ever even seen me mad. So
You don't have a temper?
no, it's
Are you in love with Stacy?
very much so.
Think she might be alive?
I do. We were living separate lives in the same house just for economics. I walk into everywhere I go, and there's this little hum that goes through the establishment. There's Drew Peterson, there's Drew Peterson, there's Drew Peterson. The marriage had been going through problems since her sister died. She changed very much, where we had her under psychiatric care and we had her medicated for the problems and emotional problems that she was experienced due to her death. Everything is invented. None of that's true.
His campaign goal was simple: paint Stacy as an emotionally unstable individual who had cheated and left him for some tropical destination.
How do you manage to stay so upbeat, given the fact that your wife's been missing for 3 months?
Oh, it's just, you know, you do what you can. You know, I'm not going to go hide in the corner and cry about it. You know, it's just like I personally grieve over it. But I do that all on my own. So
how has this affected your children?
Oh, it's they're pretty upset, but I guess that's not what we were going to talk about today. We're going to talk.
No,
about
I meant the dating part of it all. How has this idea of daddy dating affected them? It's my understanding from you that they believe their mom is on a ski vacation. Is that right?
No, the younger ones believe she's on a vacation, but the older two boys, they know she's missing and she ran off.
I wonder, as the investigation has gone forward, how difficult has it been for your family?
Pretty hard. The kids are, you know, the little ones are missing their mom, that type of thing. We went through her birthday and the holidays, and that was kind of rough for everybody.
And so, the fact that you're a suspect in her disappearance, how difficult has that been, and how have you handled that with your family?
Oh, every day it's a new day. You know, you wake up, I can only equate it to like having cancer or being told you got cancer. You go to bed and with it on your mind, you wake up with your mind and you're just looking for that miracle cure to make it all go away.
The neighbors said that they saw you carrying out a big blue barrel that would be big enough.
Again, Shepard, that's not what we agreed to talk about. You know,
I didn't agree to any restrictions on conversation. I would never do that. I just wonder what.
Okay, well then I guess I got to walk away. Have a good day, Mr. Shepard. It was nice talking to you.
Well, he'll talk about the dating game, but he won't talk about the fact that the neighbors say they saw him with a large 55-gallon blue barrel, carrying it out with someone else, and shortly after his wife went missing.
Have a good day, guys. Yeah.
His fourth wife went missing. His third wife died in a dry bathtub, and now authorities have exhumed her body, and it is now widely believed that his third wife may also have been murdered. Drew Peterson, a suspect in the disappearance of his fourth wife, who was in fun, as he put it, considering a dating game, though he's still married to the mother of his children. Drew Peterson, the former Bolingbrook police sergeant, now suspected in the disappearance of his wife and going back to the friendly confines of his home, as neighbors and friends of Stacy Peterson wonder where in the world she is.
A search warrant was executed on November 1st. The household computers, cell phones, vehicles, and firearms were seized. It was also announced that Kathleen Savio's death would be re-examined. On November 9th, Drew is announced as a suspect in Stacy's disappearance, and Kathleen's body is exhumed. Drew is suspended without pay when it's determined that Kathleen had extensive bruising and a 1-inch gash on the back of her head. Her death didn't appear to be accidental, after all. A re-examination of the crime scene photos determined that the death may have been staged to look like an accident. And on November 12th, Drew resigned from the Bolingbrook Police Department. They accepted his resignation, and Drew was able to retire with an annual pension of $72,000 a year. Drew continues his bizarre behavior with reporters.
I'm going to come camp myself in front of your house and see if you like it. I've talked to you before, so I got kids in the car, you morons. So
we're not shooting the kids,
I'll talk to you another time. Please go home. Thanksgiving's the next couple of days. Please go home. Please leave me alone. Please don't get involved in my little world. Folks, this is the holiday season. I know at least 5 families that are losing their homes that are in this area. You probably should put maybe a little bit of effort into saving these people and their families, or reaching out to your fellow man. If someone needs a shoulder to cry on or they need a meal for their families, you guys should be maybe putting a little more effort into doing that rather than harassing my family. You folks have a good day. Wearing a white shirt, gray coat, blue jeans and gym shoes. How's that? What do you want to talk about? What should be done? Yes. The media shouldn't be on my property. The media's on my property. You're trespassing. My priority is my children and their well-being and their safety and their peace of mind. And what you're doing here is ruining all that. You know. How you doing?
2 separate forensic pathologists, one paid for by the state and the other privately paid for by the Savios family, both conclude their findings of Kathleen's autopsy to be foul play. Meanwhile, an extensive investigation begins to locate Stacy.
Search efforts continued today in a Will County Forest Preserve for the body of Drew Peterson's missing fourth wife, Stacy. And Fox Chicago News has learned new details about the investigation. Investigators say this is a search that has been in the works for months. Here's Craig Wall with more.
Since at least last spring, state police investigators have had the information that is the reason for the search here at the Hamel Woods County Forest Preserve in Shorewood. But until now, they could not coordinate with the FBI to utilize some of the Fed's specialized resources. The FBI coordinated the efforts to bring in 3 cadaver dogs, and according to a source, they are specialized canines from the United Kingdom. For a third day, they have been working with teams comprised of state police and FBI ERTs, or evidence recovery technicians. They've been searching the Hamel Woods Preserve for evidence that Stacy Peterson's remains may be there. The fourth wife of Drew Peterson disappeared 5 years ago. State police suspect him of killing her, but he has not been charged. Stacy's sister is tempering her hopes.
I kind of just stay easy and hope that they do find her, but if they don't, I'm not completely disappointed.
A source tells me the search had originally been scheduled for the first week of September, but that's the week Drew Peterson was convicted of killing his third wife, Kathleen Savio, so the search was rescheduled. The night Stacy Peterson disappeared in 2007, pings from her cell phone hit a tower near the preserve, which is believed to be the reason for the search.
It's an ongoing investigation with my sister's case, and if this one leads to nothing, then I'm sure they have other areas of interest that they would like to look.
Drew Peterson's attorney, Joe Lopez, called the search a wild goose chase. So far, investigators have not found anything. The state police and the FBI will be back out here tomorrow when they expect to wrap up their search. In Shorewood, Craig Wall, Fox Chicago News.
Drew hired a publicist to help him handle all of his media appearances. In 2008, through his publicist, Drew made a statement confirming that he was engaged to 23-year-old Christina Rains.
What would he say? That she took $25,000 in cash and a couple bikinis and took off. And I knew better than that, though. All of her stuff was still there. Everything. I mean, her whole wardrobe, prescriptions, her cell phone, everything was there. In the beginning, I would say, what if Stacy comes back? He would just tell me not to worry about it, because she will not be coming back.
Drew continued to keep himself in the media, though as time went on, they became less about finding Stacy and more about clearing his name in the suspicions around his last 2 wives. In April of 2008, he took to the media again and said he was offering a $25,000 reward for any information leading to the safe return of his wife Stacy. He said in a statement, "Her mom left her, and it's clear that history has repeated itself, and that Stacy does not want to be found either," says Peterson. "I don't know whom she left with or where they are. Maybe the money will prompt someone to come forward with a lead. Her children miss her, and people believe I had something to do with her disappearance." In May of 2008, Drew was arrested for the first time on felony weapons charges. One of the guns that were seized from his home was an AR-15 assault rifle that was too short under state law. Another charge was added when it was discovered that he had illegally transferred a weapon to one of his adult sons. He pled not guilty, and his son paid his bail, so he was released. The weapon charges were eventually dropped. A year later, Drew Peterson is arrested and charged with the murder of Kathleen Savio. Again, he pleaded not guilty, but this time he was held on a $20 million bond, and he remained in custody. There was mounting evidence against Drew, including a witness that came forward, a former friend of Drew, who'd said that he'd been asked by Drew to take care of Kathleen. Again, as we saw so many times before, the media circus continued to swirl around Drew Peterson. The judge was even forced to issue a gag order to stop Drew and his media team from doing any more interviews. Drew's legal team tries everything to try and get this case dismissed. They even brought on a team of legal students to help them find grounds to get the case thrown out. All efforts were refuted, and the trial continues in May of 2012. Despite a lack of physical evidence connecting Drew to the crime, there were numerous testimonies from witnesses, including Drew's first 2 wives, that illustrated what it was like to be married to Drew, and what it was like when the relationship had run its course. The abuse, the threats, the misuse of his badge and position as a police officer, as well as his history of violence. The prosecution's star witness was Stacy and Drew's pastor, who testified as to what Stacy had told him during their final counseling session.
Pastor Neil Shorey, who counseled Drew and his 4th wife, was next. Shorey testified that Stacy told him that Drew asked her to cover up for him the night Savio died.
He very clearly told her to lie about where he was and to cover it up. And he actually said to her, this will be the perfect crime.
An alibi demolished when jurors also learned Peterson was present when police interviewed Stacy.
You know, he was right next to her, right on top of her, practically coaching her. And the fact that he was even present for that interview is mind-boggling.
The testimony, damning. Yet Peterson and his dream team were still convinced there was reasonable doubt.
The moment during the trial that would hit a home run for the prosecution was when Drew's defense called Stacy's divorce attorney to the stand. It seemed that they had miscalculated what the lawyer was going to say. They thought his testimony would paint Stacy as a vindictive ex-wife looking to take everything from Drew. Instead, the lawyer told the courts what Stacy had told him.
Kathleen Savio's divorce attorney, Harry Smith, was called to the stand by the defense to discredit Stacy.
And I literally laughed and said, no, they're not.
But they were. Smith was contacted by Stacy Peterson days before her disappearance. The defense thought Smith would testify that Stacy would say anything to get money from Drew when they divorced. Instead, Smith testified that Stacy told him Drew killed Kathleen.
I could not fathom how it was going to help anything I was saying. I couldn't see what this was doing for their case.
It was the worst thing that I've ever been a part of in a courtroom. I mean, it was awful.
After Smith's bombshell testimony, the defense team publicly put on a brave face.
Strong day.
That's beautiful.
Strong day.
What?
They tried to recover with their final witness, Drew and Kathleen's own son. Thomas testified he did not believe his father killed his mother. His father, Drew Peterson, never testified.
On September 6, 2012, the jury comes back with their verdict, and Drew Peterson is found guilty of first-degree murder. At his sentencing hearing, he screams in court,
"I did not kill Kathleen!"
To which Kathleen's sister says,
"Yes, you did."
Peterson was sentenced to 38 years in prison for the death of his 3rd wife, Kathleen Savios. While Drew is in prison, the search continues to find anything to connect Peterson to the disappearance of Stacy. He was being recorded in prison when investigators get a bombshell. From behind bars, Drew was trying to arrange to have the state's attorney, James Glasgow, killed.
Good? Alright. Just keep in mind, everything's recorded.
Right, no, it was, I told him what you said, just the green light, basically go ahead and kill him. Alright. That's what you wanted, right? It ain't no turning back.
Okay. Alright. From the first time we talked about it.
Huh?
The first time we talked about it, there was no turning back. If I get some booze in here, we'll celebrate that night.
Peterson is charged again, this time for solicitation to commit murder, and has a second trial in 2016. This trial is much faster, and the jury only took an hour to deliberate. Drew Peterson was found guilty and sentenced to 40 more years in prison. His police pension is also revoked. Today, Drew Peterson remains behind bars. He was transferred to the Terre Haute Federal Correctional Institution. To to a more secure facility in 2017, and that is where he remains. He continues to maintain his innocence in the murder of Kathleen Savio and Stacy Peterson. As of this year, Stacy Peterson has been missing for 14 years and is presumed to be deceased. Her children are now in the custody of one of Kathleen's sons. Stacy's sister, Cassandra, continues the search. She claims that she knows the location of her remains, but hasn't been able to recover them. At her own expense, she has hired numerous experts to help her and remain hopeful that one day she's able to give her sister a proper resting place.
Tonight, authorities in Illinois trying to solve a 14-year mystery, searching a suburb for the remains of Stacy Peterson, the fourth wife of convicted killer Drew Peterson. Law enforcement acting on potential evidence provided by Stacy's sister, Cassandra Kales. Kales says she obtained a video recording of skeletal remains in the water in May. She gave the video to law enforcement.
It's definitely somebody. I can't say it's my sister, but it's somebody. And it's just why it takes so long to go and retrieve something.
In 2018, Kales also said she had sonar images of human remains that could be her sister's. Now, she says she continues to be frustrated by the state police's efforts.
Why wait 5 months? How many times do I have to hand my sister or whoever it is on a silver platter to them, and then again they do nothing?
NBC News reached out to the Illinois State Police, who said they had previously searched the area, but were unsuccessful in finding anything. Kale says she believes Drew killed her sister and disposed of the body on October 28, 2007 in the canal, a belief that has propelled her to keep searching for Stacy's remains.
Basically devoted my life to.
Stacy was a 23-year-old mother of 2 at the time of her disappearance. Her husband, Drew, a former police officer, continues to be a suspect, though he has never been charged. Stacy's disappearance caused investigators to reopen another case involving his third wife, Kathleen Savio, who was found dead in a bathtub in 2004. Drew was convicted of her death and sentenced to 38 years in prison in 2013.
I know we're not focusing on Stacy today, but we're just happy for the Savio family. We always said that Stacy and Kathleen had one thing in common, and that was Drew Peterson. So as this case unfolds, hopefully it will lead us down the path to finding Stacy also.
He is also serving a 40-year sentence for attempting to hire a hitman to kill the prosecutor who put Peterson in jail for Savio's murder. Drew continues to maintain his innocence in Stacy's disappearance, saying that she left him and their children for another man.
Can you look me straight in the eye and tell me that you had nothing to do with the death of your third wife, Kathy, or the disappearance of your fourth wife, Stacy?
I can look right in your eye and say I had nothing to do with either of those incidences.
Her family widely disputes this.
All right, Maura Barrett joins us now live from Chicago. Stacy's sister, Cassandra, has been searching for her all this time. Do we know what the latest on the search authorities were conducting yesterday is?
Tom, Cassandra has been working the last 14 years, devoting her life to this search, working with local police even this past spring to go out with Marine units using sonar, where she and the police chief say they believe they saw images of human bones in the water. But both the Illinois State Police and the FBI say when they conducted multiple searches of that area, all have proven unsuccessful.
I've linked her website, which is still accepting donations to cover the cost of the operation. Well, that is it for this video. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership and Patreon to get early access, members-only content, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box, as well as links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.